On this week's show, we'll be discussing Xbox trying to move all gamers over to Xbox anymore. What is the point of the Days Gone remaster? And what is the future of Pokemon? All that and much, much more on this week's GamerGuild Podcast. Good game, everyone, and welcome back to the GamerGuild Podcast, your weekly show where we round up all the week's video game news and stories right here for your listening or viewing pleasure on youtube.com/GamerGuildTV and up there in the digital cloud on your podcast preference of choice. Joining me this week is not Mr. Chris, but the techie teacher himself, Mr. Tom. How the hell are you, Tom?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's a very nice Saturday morning. It's very bright outside. You can't tell because I'm in the dungeon, but
it wasn't feeling quite so bright last night with the rain. But today seems nice. It's nice and clear outside, so a good day all around. Feeling positive vibes.
Yeah, I didn't even notice it was raining.
The
location of my office within the house, it's not against any outside wall, so there's no windows.
It's in a fourth dimension. It's like a tesseract. It's just like contained within dimensions.
Yeah, so there's no windows, and you couldn't put a window in. I could put a window into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Or into the living room, but that'd just be weird.
It's landlocked.
Yeah. Basically, I've got a landlocked office. But as I said, we do have a great show lined up for you this week. But before we get into it, make sure if you haven't already, you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you're kept in the loop with all our fantastic content here at GamerGuildTV, such as mine and Chris's first ever look at Avowed, which was our Thursday night live stream. Tom, what are your feelings generally on Avowed?
Nice to see a new Western RPG. That's one big thing. It's sort of like, it's been a while since we've had a good hit from something like a Skyrim. So to have something that's new and fresh in the marketplace. I know, albeit some people might feel like the fantasy RPG genre might be a little bit saturated just in general, just with like things like Baldur's Gate and so on. But to have a sort of like, while we're sort of eagerly anticipating any news whatsoever on Elder Scrolls 6, it's nice to see something new, and I like the inclusion of guns. I think that's something that we haven't seen in a sort of like Western fantasy style RPG for some time.
Yeah, well, on the live stream, I dabbled with pretty much any time I got a different type of weapon, I kind of just switched over because, as I was saying on the live stream, if I'm going to play this, because it is still in contention for my next game after Platinum Metaphor, I'm going to re-roll my character anyway and start fresh.
When that actually happens.
Yeah, when. I'm very close to the end. I'm literally like 3 trophies off the Platinum. One of them is bugged, and I think you have to just ride around on your sword for ages. But I think I've been reading some of the forums, it's got like a weird reset bug. So I just need to do it all in one go. So I'm just going to have to sit there for half an hour just spinning around in circles.
Oh, that's a blast from the past, back when we had Jedi Fallen Order back in the Stadia days. And I remember like the bounty hunter bug where you couldn't get bounty hunters to spawn. God damn, I hate those bugs when it comes to 100% achievement. Yeah.
At least it's doable. I'm just going to have to sit there. So yeah, I'll get that last. But back to Avowed. Well, obviously I played it, and you're right in saying the fantasy RPG genre can sometimes feel a bit oversaturated, but I think the kind of first-person style of the RPG, like in Elder Scrolls, they're actually rare. They're not that common.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, outside of Elder Scrolls, I don't even feel like I can really name much. Maybe outside of the Warhammer Age of Sigmar stuff, like it's not the 40k stuff, but the fantasy sort of theme.
They exist, but I think they fall in the trap of where a lot of first-person shooters fall. If it's not Call of Duty, it just feels generic.
Yeah.
Like Call of Duty technically should feel generic, but because it's Call of Duty, it sustains itself. I think Avowed is a nice stopgap from what I've played before Elder Scrolls. Just a good quality not a massive game. Something to just whet the appetite, probably before like an Elder Scrolls, because it's not full open world, and I kind of
So
like that.
would you consider it sort of like an Elder Scrolls Light then, in a way?
In some ways, it's never going to escape the Elder Scrolls comparison because just the way it plays. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
play in
exactly.
third person, and some of our Discord said that it's very playable in third person. I did dabble with it, and I found it suffered from, when you try to play an Elder Scrolls game in third person, yes, you can do it, but it just feels wrong. The animations aren't that great. It doesn't feel fully like you're making contact with things. You're just kind of wafting your sword near stuff and damage is happening.
Camera doesn't quite feel like it's right lined up exactly. It's obviously designed for first person experience, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like your mileage may vary. If you're a hardcore third person, like Chris is probably going to play it third person if he plays it. I think the better experience is as a first person game.
Okay.
I think I do like the choice though, because you're always going to get some platformy sections where it is nicer to have the better view slightly pulled out, see the full character. But I think first person is probably the way to go. But you can switch quite quickly. I was playing on Series S. I think it was L3. It might be an L3 or R3. Just press and hold, switch perspectives. Cool. Okay. So it's dead easy.
Good.
I have installed it on my PC because it's a PC game, in my opinion. It feels very much like it should be a PC game, but I don't know how it'll run. I haven't had a chance yet.
Right. Okay.
Well,
you'll have to give us an update on that if you get around to it.
Yeah, I will do. Every week I'll be on this podcast, so I'll be talking about it if I do play again. What have you been up to, game-wise?
So I since the last time I was on the show, I finally finished Final Fantasy 16 and all the DLC. Nice. So we finally got that platinumed. I must admit it felt like a bit of a grind towards the end. It was very much that sort of New Game Plus experience. We talked off the show before that we have our gripes around Square Enix pushing this Final Fantasy mode on people. Yeah. It just feels like they're doing it for the sake of getting people to continue playing their games.
The huge games already. Yeah. And if a game takes like 80, I think for Rebirth, I clocked in over 100 hours. And then to get the platinum, I have to play through the entire game again in Final Fantasy mode. And it's just not something you want in the game that big. I like it existing. No. I just don't want it associated with trophies.
I've still got that experience to come as well, because that's still on my hit list.
Didn't do it.
But then... Since then, I have managed to finally get into Ghost of Tsushima. I am through the first island. I've just gotten to the point where I have freed my uncle, Lord Shimura, and we're now taking the fight back to Castle Shimura. So we're now moving into the second island. Very, very good.
Yeah. Question of Ghost of Tsushima. What language are you playing in it, and are you playing in the black and white mode?
No, I've gone OG. I'm not playing it with the Kurosawa filter on, and I am playing it with the English dubbing. It just feels like it's obviously they've gone through the effort of actually getting voice actors to do it in the English. I feel like maybe I might play a little bit for the experience with the filter with the Japanese audio instead, just to say I've done it, but. No, I want to really experience it, so I'm sort of like going with where I can sort of switch the subtitles off and just listen to it as opposed to having to read while I'm going through it, basically.
Yeah, that's fair. I personally, I played it without the Kurosawa filter on, but I did play it in Japanese, and I found that got me the right level of immersion. I did play my second platinum, because I actually have the platinum in it twice. One of the few games probably the only game actually I can say I've done that in. I did play some of it with the Kurosawa filter on, but then I found because it's such a vibrant, beautiful game. It's amazing. Yeah. It's in black and white. It looks absolutely stunning and very artistic. As I turned it back off.
Yeah. There's just something about seeing like the clash of colors, things like moving from the golden forest and seeing like the red maple leaves and stuff like that. It's just, I really do see what all the hype was now. And I know this is coming like, many years after people have already gone through that hype train of Ghost of Tsushima, but I'm really sort of feeling it. The only thing I would say is it's definitely starting to feel dated in the sense of the character models. There's obviously, because it was a PS4 game as opposed to a PS5, even the director's cut remastered version it's still very much noticeable that these are older gen models, but it certainly doesn't detract from, you know, the artistic style of the game, and certainly not the feeling of it. I just my big concern, I must be honest with it, is I am absolutely loving the game, but I am wondering whether I'm getting towards the point of a little bit of open world burnout, a little bit.
Okay.
That's my concern.
Like with with Ghost of Tsushima, or with gaming in general?
Gaming in general, I think Tsushima does it quite well in the fact that you can fast travel to a lot of the points that you see out in the wilderness. But I feel like I don't know whether Ubisoft have done me dirty in the past because of having just too many open world experiences.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not to
just,
Ubisoft
yeah.
levels of let's put 8 million pointless collectibles on the map.
We're not going back
No.
to Odyssey and Valhalla style levels ever.
No. Until Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is actually in the news. But yeah, I know what you mean. I do get open world fatigue, because that's why I was saying about with Avowed, with it not being true open world.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, because sometimes it's like, well, I'm probably going to clock in closer to 200 than 100 hours with Metaphor by the time I got the platinum. Which, it's not an open world game, but sometimes games can be too big for their own good. Like, sometimes less is actually more, because when you get, I find sometimes I found it with Horizon Forbidden West, actually. That game is so big. I've got the platinum in it, and there's literal fog of war still in my map, because I haven't been everywhere. Wow. I haven't done everything. Wow. It's like, it's just bigger than it needs to be. It's like sometimes if you condense it slightly, I feel that's where we should be at nowadays with games, where since Skyrim in the open worlds went massive, bigger, everyone's trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you get to the point where you're just filling it with pointless, boring stuff, which is the Ubisoft curse.
It's interesting because it's almost following the trend of mobile phones again, isn't it? Of like how we had huge phones and then we've started to shrink them again. So then we're going to get to that point where we get bored of small sizes. We're going to go bigger again, and it's just an endless cycle. Yeah. I mean, I for sure, one thing I would say as well, based on my current experience of Tsushima, is again, it's the same sort of things that you see in like RPG systems with like Final Fantasy, the older Final Fantasies, with like the random battles and Pokemon random encounters and stuff. That just like traveling along the path and coming across those hordes of Mongols where you just have to keep standing off against them. It does get to a point where I'm like, look, I just want to get to where I want to go.
Yeah, you find yourself running past stuff.
Yeah. But it's not a criticism of the game. It's a criticism of, I guess, the ecosystem in general, and like where we've been at and what we've had sort of like force fed to us for nigh on a decade, pretty much, really, at this point.
100%. I think there's also a bit of we're old men with
yes,
with like
we ain't got time for
things.
This anymore.
Yeah. Like, I just want to get to the next.
I'm going grey. I'm literally going grey playing this game.
I'm more grey than brown now. I tipped over.
I feel you.
Yeah, but as I mentioned, Assassin's Creed Shadows in the news, but we can't get into the news without Mr. Tom, you introducing us to the...
Wow. Yeah, it is time for the graciously gathered GamerGuild Gazette, aka... The news!
And as always, the news is brought to you by our Guild Heroes, which you can join over on the YouTube channel for as little as 99p, giving you early access to some shows, such as the remaster of the Clickercast Season 1. Again, Last of Us is actually in the news again, because we finally have a release date for it. But I'll save that for the end, just to whet your appetite. But thank you for everyone who supports the channel. It really does mean the world to us. First story of the week, Tom. Pokemon. We're getting the Pokemon Presents. It's been announced. It's 27th of February. So in a few days' time, we'll know what is coming up. Pokemon. What are you expecting from this?
All right. So Pokemon Presents kind of could be predicted a little bit based on sort of like the annual cycle that they go through with these announcements. One thing that I think really needs to be noted with this one is where they're at within the franchise timeline, really. They are very quickly approaching their 30th anniversary for like the Pokemon game series. And if you think about sort of like the Pokemon generation of where they're at with remakes, remasters, new iterations of the game, and so on. The numbers line quite nicely. I think it's about time we got a new entry in the series. So me personally, I'm looking for a next gen version of the Pokemon franchise. So I'm not talking about like a spin-off. I'm not talking about like a Legends. I'm not talking about like a anything to do with trading cards or anything. I'm talking literally Pocket Monsters, the game. Generation 10. What is it?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same. You kind of got it a bit with Scarlet and Violet, but I think the problem I had with them is after years and years of people asking them to make it a fully open world Pokemon game, they finally did it. They made it again too big, and it was full of bugs, and it didn't run great on the Switch, which I think is why last year we didn't get one. Because I do think this we've got the announcement of the Switch 2. I think come November we are getting Gen 10 Pokemon.
Wow.
On the new hardware, probably cross-gen, because you don't want to burn your bridges with the Switch audience just yet. So I feel like a cross-gen would make sense, because it'll be very early in Switch 2's lifetime, if it's out this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about what? If they're about to announce it now, the Switch 2 isn't even out. I know it's imminent that we're going to be getting like hands-on play tests and so on of the hardware, but you are absolutely right. If you think about like the last holiday period, it was very much pushing again, still Switch sales to try to get those numbers in for the fiscal year and just trying to make sure that they're up in their numbers just before they start dialing that down a little bit. But I can see that. I can absolutely see that.
I think they could go really hard, because they've also got Pokemon Legends Z2A, which is announced, and I think it's due for this year. So I think we'll get a release date on that, which is, to be honest, what I think they'll probably open with. Yeah. But you could also, they've also got weird stuff, Pokemon Sleep and some various mobile games. Pokemon Pocket Trading Card Game is probably going to be talked about because it's been such a success for them. So it'd be stupid not to. Could you see a remake? Could you see them dipping back into the originals again and do another remake of like Red and Green? Because technically they've kind of done it twice already.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, are you sort of flogging a dead horse for the sake of, literally like, this is our cash cow. Are we just going to keep milking it till this poor thing is absolutely bone dry? Yeah. I think before they dive back into the originals again for the umpteenth time, I think what they need to do is they need to sort of address the sort of negative aspects of the recent releases. So things like the Scarlet and Violet, when we're talking about the jankiness, the graphics issues, let's be honest, right? Nintendo has always been one step behind in terms of that graphical fidelity, and when nobody is expecting them to pull out a 4K 60 sort of Pokemon with ray tracing, using like the Unreal Engine 5 nanites system and stuff like that. But I think what they need to is that they need to restore a little bit of faith in people to show that actually Game Freak can do a decent job of making a step up rather than churning out the same shit again for another year just with new skins.
Yeah, Legends Arceus wasn't too bad in terms of how it played, but there was still a bit of jankiness. There was some very obvious popping of things in the world as you're running around it. But I think the problem they've had is potentially, I think with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they were overly ambitious with the hardware they were working with.
Yeah.
Nintendo, as main studios, have been shown to be able to pull absolute magic out of this aging mobile chip. You look at things like Tears of the Kingdom, it did have a few frame rate issues, but generally that game is gorgeous. Like, it's...
Yeah, but that should be the benchmark then, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
That should be, if we are able to achieve this as Nintendo, as essentially, we are a standalone first-party company who is very much doing our own thing, but very much still rivaling those PlayStation numbers and whooping Xbox. It's very much got to be one of these things that they need to look at that, and they need to be applying some pressure on Game Freak to say, like, you need to do better. quite
Yeah.
frankly.
I think, though, when I look at stuff like Tears of the Kingdom, I think that's Nintendo's devs being absolutely exceptional rather than Game
It's their
Freak.
magnum opus.
I think that's them being exceptional rather than Game Freak underperforming. I think Game Freak probably performed adequately. How many third parties could pull out a Tears of the Kingdom level performance on the Switch? It's just that is this, like, the hardware was a fairly dated mobile chip when the Switch came out. So this is why I say I think with that game they were overly ambitious. They were trying to make a next gen Pokemon game, but didn't have the hardware to really back it up, and they were trapped in that 1 year timeline where they were pretty much trying to bring out a game a year, where they missed last year.
Yeah, I can't speak for the entire gaming community, but from my own personal experiences, and maybe I do echo some voices out there, so hopefully there's going to be, you know, an element of a voice of reason here. But I feel that, like, because of the last few iterations of new entries and the remakes, so to speak, that they've sort of missed the mark slightly with the experience overall. I know, like, the echo chamber that is the internet certainly seems to get their point across to me of like where Game Freak's failures are. But my worry is, if this happens again, is that sort of like the nail in the coffin for Game Freak with the Pokemon franchise? Do Nintendo then look at this IP and say, like, look, we have a literal legend here. We have what is essentially
the most successful multimedia IP of all time.
Exactly, right. And then do they look at pulling that, like, into the studios that do, like, the Legend of Zelda games and so on instead, and look to try to get that level of exceptionalism? Because Game Freak, you know, they've been around a very, very long time, like from the 90s. Like, we've known how long they've been making these games for, but they have almost a duty of care in a way, really, that they have to, you know, handle this IP in a way that is going to, but then I also think, like, the numbers, the numbers of the sales for all of these bloody games is always, like, you know, it's always in the millions. So who gives a fuck?
There's something I think with Pokemon that sometimes we on the internet, talking heads on podcasts and stuff, or sending off tweets, need to remember. I'm a 35-year-old man who, yes, I grew up with Pokemon, so it is something that is special to me. Pokemon isn't for me, though. Nintendo don't view Pokemon as for me. They view it as something for my 6-year-old nephew.
Yes.
Who will not have the same gripes that I have. That's where I think Nintendo needs, with Pokemon especially, they need to strike that balance, because Pokemon came to be in a generation where gaming came very much more part of our lives than probably any previous generation. And it's still part of our lives. But then they've got the subsequent generations, potentially 2 generations after us nowadays, also getting invested into Pokemon. So they need to strike that balance of making sure they service a huge demographic, because the demographic for Pokemon is absolutely colossal.
Yeah,
so I think
I get your point.
I'm optimistic with what they can do. I mean, obviously, we haven't seen the Switch 2's hardware and stuff, but Nintendo are smart enough to see where the criticisms of Scarlet and Violet were, and they were largely in performance. And when they're designing new hardware, going, right, one of our biggest hardware came with a lot of flack, biggest softwares came with a lot of flack for the performance. Game Freak are probably telling us that the performance of the Switch wasn't adequate. We need to get something better here. And I'm not expecting it to go head to head with the PS5 Pro or the Xbox Series X. I'm thinking this should be alongside the Switch 2, alongside, like, the PS4.
Yeah,
that
I think that's
should be more than adequate,
isn't it, really?
Yeah, that should be more than adequate.
Maybe a PS4 Pro sort of level. I think it needs to be like PS4.5. It has to not necessarily challenge current gen. I agree with that, but it does need to be a step in the right direction. And I do feel that people become more noticeable of anything that dips below 60 frames these days, running in performance mode. So I think that, like, if it's very, very infrequent and it's only in certain areas of a game, then fine, we can let that slide, right? But if it's a constant thing, well, that's going to piss people off.
I would actually be quite happy for a Pokemon game to be locked 30 frames per second. It's turn-based.
Okay.
Because it's a turn-based game, I don't think them extra frames are that useful. Yes, you might notice them at first when you're running around the world, but you get over that stuff quite quickly, I find. Heavy action games, where it's very much twitch shooters or perfectly timed parries and stuff and things like Soulsborne game, you need it. Absolutely need it. Turn-based, I don't think it matters as much. I think sometimes people get too obsessed over that frame rate. But it's what suits the game. I would rather a locked 30 frames on a Pokemon that has a really nice world, very engaging gameplay, and looks stunning rather than 60 frames but looks a bit crummy. But
we'll just have to wait to see. It's a matter of days, isn't it, really? So we'll see very soon.
It's horses for courses, but yeah. Anything else you think they could bring out of this? Because obviously I think the big thing we're probably expecting, I think we agree, is 10th gen and probably Legends, a date for the Legends Arc Z2A.
Yeah, I think that's the other one, isn't it? Really, I'm keen to see what the second iteration of the Legends franchise is in terms of what it looks like, where they're going with it. I kind of liked the style of Arceus, but
I loved Arceus.
I just think I liked the idea of going back in the past, and I thought the experience was great, especially in like a pre-Pal world where we could have that experience. Yeah. But like the second iteration, I think we'll very much have to see, does this cement Pokemon having like a new vertical, I suppose, really a new standalone IP within the Pokemon world.
Yeah, which I think that's where they see it, because what I liked about Legends Arceus was that it was more of an open world collector fun. It was very much you got to catch them all. So Z to A is going to, I think, cement what that vertical is. I'm surprised though we actually haven't had a second Let's Go series.
Okay.
We just haven't.
What would you say would be the choices of Pokemon for that? Because obviously we had Eevee and Pikachu.
It'll be Gen.
Where did you go with the second?
So, oh God, my brain goes straight to Togepi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can see that based on like the anime as well.
And I don't know what I'm struggling to think of a Gen 2 Pokemon that would stand out.
Or do they, like in a mascot sense? Do they go like Togepi and Jigglypuff or something like that instead? Sort of thinking along the lines of like, what are the standout cutesy Pokemon, I suppose, if you call them, really.
They could do. I'm just trying to think of a Gen 2 one.
Yeah.
Because Gen 2 was more of an expansion to the original roster rather than where I think Gen 3 and here's a new full set. There was a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon around in Gen 2.
And I mean, if they went something like Togepi and Mew, then I feel like everybody would just default to Mew.
That's the problem. Right? My brain went to Larvitar, but who the hell's buying Togepi in that sense?
Who's getting a Larvitar? Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, but I think that is something that could be around. And then there's also got the remake series going on.
What about something like a Togepi and Marill? Like the Marill, like the
that's
blue.
It. I think they're the two. Marill's it.
Yeah.
They both got 3 evolutions. Yeah, Togepi and Marill. I don't think it's going to hit as hard as Pikachu and Eevee, but for fans of that,
ship it, Nintendo. There you go. We'll send the bill in the post.
Yeah, but for fans, sorry, a cat just tried to jump up on my piano and just missed. I think he landed on it because he landed on the keys. The keys went under.
It's the next coming of Keyboard Cat.
One second.
No worries. Wow. It's cat time. We've got to pay the cat tax. Hello.
Another one of the verticals is the remakes, because we had Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, or the other way around. I can't remember. Shining Diamond, Brilliant Pearl.
I do not recall at this point. I'm getting so mixed up in all of these different iterations at this stage, man.
Do you think it's time for the next, I think it's Gen 5 remakes they should be up to now? Do you think it's time for that?
Potentially. I think the thing is, to me, when I think of like the generations, I think Gen 5 was I feel like that's the one they've got to get right again, because I think Gen 5 was quite sort of like, we obviously had the red, blue, the green, the yellow, whatever you want to call that the original gen, followed by the gold and the silver. That was very much sort of like our generation, and I feel like the next generation's like big iteration of Pokemon was that Gen 5 sort of stage right there. So I think like for that to be a hit for those sort of like later millennials moving into the Gen Alpha sort of people, that's kind of like where they're going to have to look to see really like, is that going to be a success for them? But yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
I like the idea of the remake ones because it's a way of, because some of the old games don't play that great. If you ever go back to Gen 5s, the black and white, they are so slow.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, we'll give that.
Everything about the game is slow. It's painfully slow. It's like, so that's where I think something could be improved. But to be honest, I think they're getting to the point where it's almost better if maybe think of remaster rather than remake. Because Gen 5, that was Nintendo DS.
Yep. Oh,
so it's like, well, do we just get it? Do we just remaster it, get it running on the Switch and the Switch 2? Because no point in shooting yourself in the foot by making Switch 2 only. And get up the frame rate, up the resolution, just get it running smoother and quicker.
Yeah, that's fair. Or is it about time that we finally see some of those classic Pokemon moving onto Nintendo Online? Like that's the other thing, right?
They did on the DS, on the 3DS. They re-released the originals, but then it didn't carry over to the Switch.
Yep.
Like, which is right? Just insane because it's like, I bought them, but I'd love them on my Switch, but I can't. Is there anything else you want to touch on Pokemon-wise before we move on?
I've heard rumors out there of the idea of how they're bringing these sort of like standalone handheld consoles, like the old Game & Watch styles, and I wonder whether they could massively capitalize on something like a classic Pokemon handheld, where it is just, it's built into like the ROM chip of a single device. There's nothing you can do with it other than play Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, or Pokemon Yellow.
You know where my brain just went to? You remember when we were in Leeds and we saw that desk with all like the hacked consoles?
Yeah.
And some of them Game Boy Advances looked absolutely stunning with USB-C and OLED screens. Do that. Get all Pokemon games up to, not including like the DS ones, because you need 2 screens for them. So all like from Gen 1 to Gen 4, get them all running on one of them.
So we're talking about Game Boy Color Advance.
Game Boy, right? Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. Yeah. All them generations
all packaged together. Here's a 52-in-1 cartridge again. Something like that. I know what you mean.
But have the online functionality working as well. So you can play
charged.
Have them compatible with have Pokemon Bank on there as well. No, it's Pokemon Home now. Have that on there.
Pokemon Home.
So it becomes a true like old Pokemon experience.
So and what sort of price point do you put on that device then?
Ooh, $24.99. No, it's going to be.
God damn.
Visual thing, and that's with the OLED screen. With the OLED screen, with an OLED screen, you'll probably bang on the door 300. Without it, maybe close to 150, 200. To be honest, I'd ditch the OLED screen.
Yeah, because at that point, I feel like you're pushing collector territory, aren't you, really? You're talking like people getting it literally for the sake of saying, I am one of these people who has this. I see where you're going with it. I love the idea. Just the market, I just kind of feel like...
I'm pitching this too high, to be honest. You go down, you just give it a nice LCD, decent battery life, in the form factor of like a Game Boy Advance, and you sell it, how they did like the SNES Mini as a collectible thing. You're kind of hitting that, and with it being Pokemon's 30th anniversary, that'd be really fucking cool to do.
Yeah, brand it, literally have like a seal on the back of it, something that's like actually embossed in the plastic casing itself or something like that.
Yeah, and you say right from release, it's going to be on market for a year, and then it's done.
Yeah, It's the equivalent of like the Legend of Zelda DS, isn't it? That you've got something along those lines there.
Yeah, it'd be a
like
cool test bed actually for that kind of idea. So they could do that with probably like with old Zelda games as well, with old Mario games in a similar kind of vein.
There's if there's any company out there that could pull something off like that, it's Nintendo, just because of that like collectability and
They've done it.
that sort of exactly right. Like they have already tried it before, so it seems like a natural evolution of that, I suppose.
100%. I think we move on now to Assassin's Creed Shadows, because there's some news that's come out about it, and I want to get your take on it. Apparently, Assassin's Creed Shadows will have a canon mode, not canon as in cannonballs and pirates and stuff, as in if you pick this mode, you lose your narrative options.
Okay, that's interesting.
So as a game, it gives, because there's two playable characters, we know that, and you can play the story out in different ways, go to different missions with different characters. This is all stuff they've announced before. But in canon mode, and there's different dialogue options and that kind of thing you'd expect nowadays. But with the canon mode enabled, you're locked to decisions that Ubisoft are seeing as the canon experience.
So this is the sacred timeline of events.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Deviating. Yeah. I could see the benefit to some people who might be playing just for the action experience and not so much for the narrative. But again, as somebody who's playing Ghost of Tsushima, that's kind of like the experience that I've got at the moment, is very much there is a canon mode, so to speak, for that game. Yes, there are dialogue options to some degree when you're moving around the world, but it has no real impact on like what you're doing, at least not that I've experienced so far with Tsushima. With Shadows, I guess having a canon mode, it then brings up the question to me of, do those dialogue choices actually matter? So like if they're saying that we have a canon mode in the game where you follow that sacred timeline, as we're calling it, what does the experience look like if you don't have that? Like, how much are these dialogue options actually going to implicate the storyline? That's the question it leads me to.
I don't think it's going to see like multiple endings where the ending of the game will be different based on your decisions. But there again, I'm playing what is pretty hardcore RPG and metaphor, and on my second playthrough, I'm not making any decisions. My dialogue choices literally do not matter. They can matter a bit in terms of experience and stuff get generated, but in terms of the overall story, they do not matter. You can just skip through and just click, which is what I've been doing. I kind of like this, because I'm one where I understand where Ubisoft is coming from, because if they want to put more choice into where your choices will impact your experience through the game rather than your endpoint, I think that's a good thing for a gamer to have. But because Assassin's Creed is this behemoth long-running series where all the narratives are intertwined, it is that kind of thing. It's not like, okay, the new Assassin's Creed out is a complete reset of the universe. They need to have that main timeline running through it. But ultimately, what they've done here is give you the choice to not have choice.
Yeah.
Which...
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, so you can play it however you want to and get the experience of it as a standalone game in its own right. Or you can play it exactly as Ubisoft intended the story to unfold.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's unique.
I don't think for me it's the be all and end all for the Assassin's Creed franchise. I do think that is going to come down to any iteration on the gameplay more than anything, of seeing like, what do they do with this iteration of Assassin's Creed that makes it really stand out at a time that Ubisoft need it to stand out.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the news. I'm not going to dwell on it, but Ubisoft's revenue is down again. And again, well, they've had a 31% decline. It seems like every few months we're reporting on Ubisoft's numbers going down, and To be honest, I think it's fairly expected. This is, I think, the problem with a publicly traded company, where because they haven't had any successful products really in 6 months, in a year or 2 years, whatever it is, their shares are going to go down. Revenue is going to go down. They've also not brought anything out.
No.
So that I take these sort of stories with a pinch of salt. It is problematic for Ubisoft because they are publicly traded, and investors who are not that savvy about what's going on in video games and understanding the cadence and understanding how actually, yes, we had a few not flops, but underwhelming games.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars Outlaws didn't flop, but was a bit underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, looking at things like X Defiant, they've pulled support of X Defiant. You know, Ubisoft's in this.
They've had a rough time of things, which I feel a bit sorry for the devs who are making Assassin's Creed Shadows, because every time a story comes out like this, everyone turns around and goes, Assassin's Creed Shadows have bailed us out. It's putting a huge amount of pressure on that game. It feels like it needs to do Valhalla levels, which Valhalla's sales were insane.
Looking at it realistically, it kind of really is, and I hate to say that it is, because if we went back 10 years and we even discussed the idea that Ubisoft would be at this point, you would have called me an idiot, because, you know, at this point Ubisoft were hosting their own Ubisoft Connect events. They were like having this huge showcase of their own, independent to E3, where they were, you know, out and out showing these are all of our amazing franchises. These are all of the things that are coming out on the, you know, in the coming year. And now we're at a point where Ubisoft very much feel like they're flailing, and I get what you say. It is a huge amount of pressure, and my heart goes out to the dev teams for the Assassin's Creed franchise in particular, that they have such a weight on their shoulders at the moment to make this thing hit. It kind of does have to hit for them.
Yeah, it's also the Japan Assassin's Creed. People want it for a long time. And unfortunately for them as well, it's going up in people's minds this year against Ghost of Yotei, which is something I'm sure they would absolutely not want to do.
Absolutely.
So it's just a lot of pressure. But I think this is the problem, is you mentioned 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I think Ubisoft were already beginning to stagnate in terms of what they were producing. And then they've, since then, spent the bulk of the last 10 years chasing trends, and it's only really Assassin's Creed. They've got some massive hits. Rainbow Six Siege, still going strong. But for every Rainbow Six Siege, there's an X Defiant or a Hyperscape. There's stuff that's just come, died, or no one's interested. Even a lot of the Tom Clancy games have just disappeared, like Ghost Recon, Wildlands and stuff. They're not coming out anymore. Star Wars Outlaws just didn't. Star Wars Outlaws would have done really, really well in the pre-Jedi Fallen Order world.
Absolutely.
But then we've seen what the quality can be. And this is where I've always felt Ubisoft fall down, where they don't make bad games, they make good games. They just don't make great games.
Yeah, they're sort of very much at the point of, I wouldn't say AAA, even though they have AAA IP. I think it's very much like that it comes out and it's very much sort of like your 7 to 8 out of 10s at best. You're like,
you get what you're expecting.
Double A.5, right? Like it's nearly there, but there is just something about Ubisoft games where it just feels like, again, release after release, there's the same sort of feeling to it. And whether it comes down to the engines they're using and, you know, the teams behind it, I feel like every Assassin's Creed is the same with a new skin, almost.
I've felt for a while, basically since we've been doing the podcast, Ubisoft games feel like they've come off a production line. They don't feel like an artistic endeavor.
Absolutely.
You can see the checklist when you're playing them. It has to be open world. It has to have side quests. The game needs to be at least this big. You need to have this many collectibles in order to keep players engaged. But the quality in the side stuff isn't there. The quality in the main narratives for Assassin's Creed is amazing.
Yeah.
100%.
But that comes down to leadership.
Yeah.
That comes down to leadership decisions. And at that point there, if leadership are saying, the boardroom, the stakeholders are saying, this is what you've got to do, this is what you've got to produce, then maybe it is time for new leadership finally. So maybe, maybe this, while we say it's like the final nail in the coffin for Ubisoft, maybe that's a good thing for these franchises, potentially.
Yeah, well, I think the best thing for Ubisoft would be Assassin's Creed Shadow to be actually more ambitious and kind of give it, the Breath of the Wild, God of War treatment to the franchise. Go, right, we're going to elevate what this franchise is. So it isn't just the next Assassin's Creed game. It is our vision for the future for the next decade of Assassin's Creed games. And it is distinctly different to... Well, it's like what Odyssey... It's like what Origins did. It reinvented the genre. They need to do that again, I think. And then you get into the point where if they do that and it succeeds, this is where I think Ubisoft's leadership, because they are publicly owned, that's one of the problems. Yeah. So as much as their leadership might want to, their hands are tied a bit. So they need one of them to be incredibly successful so they can go to shareholders going, look, we reinvented Assassin's Creed again. Every time we've done this, every few decades, if we do this with our main franchises, they start feeling fresh again. It keeps them ticking over. We get a huge spike in revenue. We need the license to not chase trends, to not chase the games as a service trend, unless that's what the game is meant to be, to give our developers the creative license to produce the best possible game that they can to completely make their vision. I think the talent's there. It clearly is. So that's Absolutely. Where it just feels like they are. But which is why I kind of think of something like Canon mode. It's kind of interesting because I don't know of any other game that's kind of done something like that. But
yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
We will. Also, moving on actually to Tides of Annihilation. Have you seen anything about this game, Tom?
Oh yeah. This is very much a game that is on my radar right now. Yeah. It looks to me like a spiritual successor to Shadows of the Colossus. Like let's be real, with an incredible graphical visually it looks stunning. We have the voice actress of Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3 voicing the main character in the game as well. She's doing a great job. This idea of like using this fantasy setting of like the vibe I get from it is almost like a mythological, legendary Knights of the Round Table sort of vibe.
Well, that's literally it. It's based on a Arthurian legend.
Yeah,
set in modern, a fantasy version of modern London.
Which to me is just like literally pump this into my veins. Yeah. Like this is a game looking from what I saw from the announced trailer. I am all over this game.
100%. All over it.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching it with my girlfriend. We were both like, "Ooh, what's this?" like,
yeah,
want this? Yeah. It's kind of got that dark gothic fantasy as well.
This was the game that stood out for me at the State of Play. Like this is the one game out of everything that we saw. This was the one game that really caught my attention, and that was in a sea of. Let's be real. There were a few sci-fi things in there, and being a sci-fi and fantasy lover, it was Tides of Annihilation that really, really got my attention.
Yeah, 100%. I was kind of the same. It stood out in what I thought was a decent PlayStation showcase. So the story, the reason it's in the news is actually because this is actually from the same devs who made Black Myth Wukong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is something I didn't realize when I watched it. No. But apparently so I think it's published by, I want to say Tencent. Okay. But the interesting thing with Black Myth Wukong, they've openly admitted that they were very much targeting a Chinese market and an Eastern market with that game. Where for this game, they've intentionally targeted a Western one.
I'm starting to get a real vibe. Yeah, I'm just starting to get a real vibe for like what their, what their checklist looks like. They target an Eastern audience. Let's go for an Eastern Chinese-based mythical like legend. Now let's look at the Western audience. Now we're going very much like British, like Arthurian legend as well. So yeah, Yeah, I can now make those links. That's very fair. That's very fair.
Yeah, so I think that's quite an interesting way to go about it, because I think that what they've identified there is, say, the Chinese audience and the Western audience want different things from games. So give them it. Like, Black Myth Wukong did well over in the West, and this game probably will do well over the East, but by kind of focusing a bit. And yeah, I think it could be a really good decision.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it looks stunning. The gameplay looks amazing, and it doesn't look too Soulsborne either, which is where I think sometimes Eastern developers get into problems. Yeah. Where they make games crushingly hard, but not everyone wants that. It's why I love the concept of Soulsborne games. I just don't like playing them.
This is why I say, to me it feels like, I mean, I don't know how much of a spiritual successor it is to a Shadows of the Colossus, but obviously the giant night landscape enemies, whether they're enemies or not, we don't know yet. Obviously, it's very early in what we've seen, but that's the vibe I get, and I'm for that for sure.
I think it does have other combat as well, which Shadow of the Colossus didn't have, just against normal enemies. So it's not just the big giant colossi to beat. But I think this could be really, really, really cool. It's one of them. I just want to know more about this game.
Oh yeah. I'm still questionable on the title, like the Tides of Annihilation. I don't 100% see the link there. I mean, if it is made by the Black, I'm not saying that they should go for like creating and like this series of Black Myth whatever. So like where they have like Black Myth Wukong, and this is like Black Myth Arthur. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. It sounds shit. Let's be real. But I mean, Tides of Annihilation, I mean, it depends on how that links in. It does feel very much like an Eastern developed RPG title. Like, let's generate word of word, slap it on our game. That's how
I think it seems like their strategy is to take like folklore and things that are like legends from different, I mean, this is only the second data point, so it might change, but taking like the legends of different cultures and go, we're going to reimagine that into whatever hell we want. So this one almost looks more like, what if that we told the Arthurian story in a game that plays more like a Devil May Cry and as a gothic horror set in modern London?
Oh yeah, no, that's literally like that's hitting all my buttons. That is just like just don't. It's not good. It's not good for the podcast if we keep talking like this, because I'm just going to make a mess of myself. So.
Should I move on then? Let's move on. Before Tom makes a mess of himself, let's move on to Xbox, because Phil Spencer said he is done trying to convince PS5 and Switch players to move over to Xbox.
Hell yeah,
that's Phil, a big statement.
Yeah. We knew this was going to get, we're getting to this point. I mean, it's already been confirmed that Xbox this generation is like third in sales overall. Like it's behind Nintendo, it's behind Sony. They've got to be realistic about this. Like Phil Spencer is very much. I mean, I'm going to say something sort of like off the cuff here a little bit. You keep saying this shit, Phil, and it's like. We're still waiting for more announcements of like the Xbox games coming to other platforms. Like we're looking for. We've already seen Forza Horizon 5 on the PlayStation Store, ready to wish list, ready to go. Stop talking about this now and like start actually showing us the Halo, the Master Chief Collection coming out on X, Y, and Z consoles. Start giving us Gears of War. Like just do it. Come on, stop talking about it and just do it.
I think that it has kind of started doing it. We do know stuff is coming off the PlayStation, and probably Switch. I think was Grounded come over to Switch.
Grounded's already. No, Grounded's already on Switch. I'm sure.
So I think it started. I mean, the other part of the same story is he said he would be honest and transparent about platforms in the future showcases. suggesting that Xbox showcases will start featuring PlayStation and Nintendo logos if the game's going there.
I just feel like he's a broken record at this point. I feel like week after week he's saying the same shit again. So I just want him to fucking like shut up or put up. One or the other. Just do it. Just fucking do it. Come on.
I think he's definitely prepping the groundwork, isn't he? Going, we've been talking about this for ages. So when it happens, it shouldn't be a massive shock. So the internet, you won't get someone who's a massive Xbox fan who thinks that Xbox games shouldn't be anywhere other than Xbox, because somehow putting an Xbox game on Halo on PlayStation diminishes his experience. So that person doesn't start taking the internet with fury. They will.
But the thing is, Richie, is that this is more relevant, if I'm being real. This is more relevant to the people who are in the know on the daily, listening to podcasts, listening to people like us, talking about this stuff. Whereas if I were to go to the students at my school, people like kids who play on Xbox, they wouldn't have a clue. That's the truth of the matter. There is still very much that culture within the ecosystem of that sort of tribalism, I suppose, really, of I'm PlayStation, I'm Xbox.
It's from the 90s, isn't it?
And they're fucking outcasts. Yeah, absolutely.
Sega does what Nintendo don't, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a classic. But yeah, it's one of these things. We know and we're prepared for it. But again, how much of an impact is that actually going to have when it happens? Like, will the current generation of gamers, the kids who are in their early teens, will it matter so much to them? Will we see more numbers driven over towards PlayStation as the place to play, or will people still buy their separate consoles?
I think you're right. I think this is a very long game that Microsoft's been playing. And you know what? I feel like what I've been predicting since we started Sounds of Stadia 5 years ago is I was predicting an Xboxless future. Oh, I've got one. Not drinking out of it today, but I've been predicting an Xboxless future where Xbox as a platform will still exist, but with cloud gaming and how much they were kind of after Stadia came out, probably for a while before things like GeForce Now took off and Luna came out and Sony took out the nails out the coffin of PS Now. It was kind of Xbox were kind of the next, probably the biggest players in cloud gaming for a little while. I think they're preparing where, you know what? We don't need to be selling these boxes at a loss so you get to play our games. They almost might be doing the Sega thing. We're going to be a publisher of games rather than a manufacturer of hardware. It's not next gen. They've announced hardware for the next generation already, that it's coming. But it could be the one after. Where they're just...
Well, the next gen may very well just be digital only at that point, in which case it is a step in that direction, isn't it?
Well, that's what I think, because we've had the half step this generation with the Series S being digital only. You can get a discless PS5. The next generation, I think, is digital only. The one after that, I think, is entirely cloud.
Yeah.
And we're probably talking 20 years' time from now. So the kinks will be resolved. And at that point, are you basically just a publisher?
In essence, you've got first party and you've got first party, but you release third party to other platforms, don't you?
Yeah. So rather than Xbox chasing after people who want to play on PlayStation or play on Nintendo, just give them access to your games now. Drip feed them. Not every game day and date, but drip feed them. And over the course of maybe the next 10 years, suddenly...
Open the floodgates. Yeah, release the river.
Well, you're just going to slowly open it rather than open it all at once. So in 10 years' time, you might have the next Xbox, but all the Xbox games will be on PlayStation and potentially on the Switch too as well. I think
it's mental.
It feels like we're still walking in that direction.
Yeah, it's just mental to me. Like the last time I was on the show with Chris, I talked about how I'm sort of reminiscing a little bit here. So sorry to detract for another moment, guys. But I feel that if Google had pitched Stadia now, how much different that timeline would look. Like at this point.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Although I think I would have done worse because I think then they would have been behind the curve rather than in front of us. Where I think Stadia was in front of the curve, which is where you want to be, but they didn't have the library. And because they didn't have the library, they didn't get the gamers. Because they didn't get the gamers, they didn't get the revenue, which meant they couldn't get the games. And vicious cycle, you're done.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
no, that's fair.
If you pitch Stadia now, I think it'd struggle even worse. Because at this point, I don't think I would be interested in Stadia. Because GeForce Now exists. I have Xbox Cloud Gaming. I have cloud gaming on PlayStation. Even Nintendo's got a toe in the water. Yeah. It's like, at this point, do I need another platform that does stuff that I can already do? And I love Stadia. I thought Stadia was incredible. It's the best cloud gaming experience I've had to date.
Yep.
But it's
mad.
It came out when it was one. It came out before it started this generation of cloud gaming. Stadia.
It did. It's mad to think historically it's quite significant in the gaming space.
It is.
Also, it's left such a bad taste in many people's mouths because they, for whatever reason, wanted to naysay it. It's a bit of the old sounds of Stadia blood coming back through there. Sorry, guys.
You've just bought a PlayStation Portal. That hardware doesn't exist without Stadia, in my opinion.
Absolutely right. I would completely agree.
Yeah.
Because to me, the way I see it is that like that sort of iteration of cloud gaming is very much what got me to get things like, a Razer Kishi. That was, we saw the backbone being produced. We saw, Xbox very much moved into that market space, and their trend is changing towards play anything as an Xbox. And now we've got the PlayStation Portal. It's literally like you say, everyone is now doing it.
Yeah,
everyone is.
It's because of Stadia and what Stadia could have been. It could have been this revolutionary thing, and it kind of was not. It didn't have the staying power itself, but because it had the backing of Google and the revenue, it shocked the industry enough. So the big players invested into cloud gaming, or upped their timelines with cloud gaming. And so it is. So we've went off on a weird tangent here, but it is.
Sorry, I hold my hands up.
It's fine.
Bad.
Actually, while we're on this tangent, there is 3 new games coming to Xbox Cloud Gaming that are from the owned library, so not Game Pass library. Broforce, The Talos Principle 2, and Tomb Raider 46 Remaster. Might as well shoehorn them in at this point since we're talking about cloud gaming.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. Well, I think we should probably keep things ticking over because we are now into the podcast and we've still got quite a few stories to go through. It's a busy week. Days Gone. Did you play Days Gone at all, Tom?
Yes. I must admit, albeit briefly, but I did play a little bit.
All right. Because it's a weird one because at the start of the week, I found an article from Push Square basically questioning what is the point of the Days Gone remaster. A few days later, it's selling well. I think them two answer their own question. So I've got Chris's take. I'm going to read Chris's take on it. Then we can go into it ourselves.
Okay.
So Chris wrote in, as you can, over in our Discord channel or in the comments below. This game launched during the PS4 golden era when we got Uncharted 4, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2, God of War Reboot, Spider-Man, Bloodborne, Death Stranding, and Horizon. Was Days Gone possibly being unfairly compared to arguably the best PlayStation output in history? Even in a title-winning sports team, there will be still someone who's the worst. Yeah. So his take is kind of, it's an underappreciated game. I'm guessing where he's coming from with the remaster is it was underappreciated when it came out. Is the remaster what the game needs?
It's like it's a re-release, isn't it? Really, I know the remaster. A lot of people are commenting on like the graphics between the original and the remaster because there's not. Yeah, it really is. But you compare something like the Until Dawn. I saw a video of that last night of like the graphics comparison there, and there is a significant improvement, I would say, with Until Dawn. Arguably, again, around the same sort of time as this, but Days Gone was a game that I remember I was enjoying it, but it did fall exactly as Chris said into that point where we had a lot of big hitting games, and it was at a time where a lot of people really, we're talking like what, around the COVID era, like right on the cusp of COVID, as COVID's taking off. I certainly remember playing God of War like during COVID and Spider-Man during COVID. And I do think that, yeah, perhaps it did get a bad rap. Perhaps it got a bad rap because of what it came up against. It does come out as a last place contender in such a busy gaming world, and that library that it went up against, they're all gold medal winners in their own right.
Oh God,
really.
yeah. Now, we're talking about a long list of Game of the Year contenders, if not winners.
Yeah.
A Days Gone, I think, was a very good game, but not quite hitting the pinnacle of that Game of the Year contention. It's in that one tier below.
I think going up against, like, directly speaking, going up against something like The Last of Us Part 2 is a big oopsie, I suppose, in a way, really, because you've got something that's of a relatively sort of similar standpoint in terms of like its narrative, and you might be trying to pick, you're getting a new IP out there, but it's at a time when The Last of Us is very much in people's heads.
Yeah,
it's very much right there.
It's an interesting one, actually, because they're remastering Days Gone, but they've also previously announced that they're not interested in ever making a sequel. So,
yep,
I feel like this is just a library filler.
Yeah.
As I've said before, because of the shift to games as a service and the shift back, it's left. We got things like Last of Us Factions, which apparently was meant to be a really good game. I think Shuhei Yoshida said recently in interviews he's played it was a really good game, and that was Naughty Dog's decision to move away, because after the talk to Bungie and the reality of having that game live meant they wouldn't have been able to do Intergalactic Heretic Prophet.
Right.
So they made the decision to can it, to focus on something else rather than Sony interference. But that's what left. That's just one example, but that's left a huge timeline gap of probably several years where they're not working on their next game. So I think Sony have got quite a few studios like that, so they need to fill the gaps. And Days Gone is probably a good idea in that sense, because it was underappreciated when it came out. It's developed a bit of a cult following, so let's remaster it and get it running better than it's ever been on PS5 Pro with a $10 upgrade fee, which is something I don't like. I understand why they do it. I don't like it, because if you bought the same game, an Xbox first party game, and I've bought it on Xbox One, and they remastered it for Series X, and I've then played it on the Series X, you're getting the best version of the game without an additional fee. Yep. So that's why I don't like it, because we have another companies doing it better. But they can argue it's a full remaster. But it's also
a bad precedence, I think, really, because we are very much in this sort of cycle at the moment of taking older games and remaking them, remastering them. We've sort of been through that golden era of gaming, I think, in a way, and it sucks to say that I feel that new ideas seem to be few and far between at this point.
I think it's just the games are bigger than they ever have been. They're more complicated than they ever have been. They take a lot longer to produce than they ever have been.
A lot of money.
The average cycle is not 3 years anymore. It's more like 5 or 6. So, but the revenue has to keep coming in. So I think, to be honest, and it's purely optional. So this is why I kind of don't like it, but I don't mind it. I personally wouldn't pay the $10, but I could see why someone would. And then it's a choice, because you can just go buy the PS4 version, stick it in your PS5 and works. So as long as that have that backwards compatibility and it's not a mandatory upgrade, you can't complain too much.
No, not really.
Yeah, but apparently it doesn't work on if you have the PS Plus version, which is just a pain. Then need to sort that shit out. This is just a Sony back end thing where the two siloed sometimes like, oh yeah, if you got this game on PS Plus, you can pay the $10 upgrade fee. Why? Like, but
fix it, man. Come on, fix it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Sony doing weird Sony shit.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's an interesting one. It'd be interesting to see where it goes. But I think there isn't a movie or TV show in the works, so there might be another reason to going back to the well on this game to get the interest there.
Well, I mean, after the success of The Last of Us, that's certainly one thing to think about. We're very much again in this world of lots of gaming IP is being licensed for movies, for TV shows, isn't it? So perhaps this is all interlinked.
Could be. But you know what isn't interlinked with Days Gone? Lost Records, Blooming Rage. My mind went blank there. So episode 1, it is episodic. Episode 1, or tape 1 as they call it, is out, and we have the reviews. Before we get into the reviews, Tom, are you what is your expectation for this game? Are you any interest at all?
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is like the new Life is Strange, isn't it?
Yes, it's from the original Life is Strange developers.
Right.
Don't Nod. I think this is Don't Nod. But then Deck 9 took over the series, so now they've done their own spiritual successor to a game that they made.
And this is, so it's very much like a coming of age sort of tale. Feels like it's got a very like 90s vibe to it almost.
Yeah.
Perhaps to an extent.
It is only split into 2 parts, and the second part will be out on April the 15th, just for record there.
Wait, when did this one come out?
I think last week. Tuesday,
and the next
I believe.
One comes out April 15th.
Yeah. So about 2 months between. That's where I'm at. I've talked about this before, briefly. I like episodic games. I have no interest in buying them piecemeal.
Okay.
I like them split into episodes because it's like watching a TV show. You play an episode, you go to bed. Next day, you play the next one. But I don't want to wait months between.
Did you feel that same way with the Telltale games?
I never played any Telltale game on day and date. I always wait for them all to come out.
When it all comes out. Yeah. I think I'm in exactly the same boat with Borderlands, Game of Thrones, Wolf Among Us, The Walking Dead. I'm pretty sure with all of them that I waited until they were all out before purchasing them.
Yeah. The only game that I've tried to play day and date for each chapter was Life is Strange 2, and it's the only one I never finished.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Because I just bent out the story. Yeah. So that's why I like them splitting, but it's doing okay actually.
It's interesting, is what I would say. The concept is interesting. I don't particularly feel any sort of major attachment to these types of games. I was very much a Telltale kind of guy when it came to it. I bought into them mostly for the IP, I would say, as opposed to something that's standalone. I can see that there's probably quite an artistic audience out there who might be interested in this sort of story. Maybe people who very much want to sort of have. I see it as people with a specific taste of media, like types of people who have a specific taste in like certain TV shows.
You have to be interested in the topics they handle because they are quite emotionally intelligent in what they cover. But if you're not interested in like a sincere, as Games Radar put it, a wonderfully sincere portrait of teenage girlhood, if you're not interested in that at all, this game's not going to be for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Right. 36-year-old bloke sitting here, I don't really see the need to want to play a game about it.
You don't like to think back to the times when you were a teenage girl?
Once upon a time, no, I mean, I see the point of these things. I see what they're trying to do. I think the narrative, I think the idea of a story driven, and they are very much driven by their story beats, aren't they? These types of games. They're very much like learning about like becoming really emotionally attached to the characters, just like you would with a TV show. To me, it's more interactive media. It's more interactive TV in a way that I see these kinds of games.
Yeah. It's interesting,
not
actually.
Massively for me.
This is one where I find it interesting that how some outlets actually already scoring, because Games Radar 4.5 out of 5, The Guardian 4 out of 5, Eurogamer 4 out of 5, but it's only half the story. So imagine watching half of a movie, then going, "Oh, this movie's terrible," but then the final act is amazing. It actually pulls everything together. So it's hard to know for a game like this, but
it's, to me as well, it's like, imagine we go back to our childhood, right? You buy something like Final Fantasy VII, in its dual case, 3 discs. But you only buy 1 disc. You get the 1 disc. You play that disc, you get to the end of it, and you go,
"What happened to Sephiroth?"
Right. Guess I gotta wait a couple of months till I can buy disc 2.
Yeah.
It seems strange to me. Like, yeah, especially with such a close cut date for episode 2 as well.
Yeah, it feels like they could have just launched it in April.
Yeah.
I don't know why the decisions are there. But moving on, this is a story that's been evolving very quickly over the course of the week. But if you go to TonyHawkTheGame.com, which is an official site, there's a countdown to the fair. It is the 3rd of April, 4th of March. Stupid Americans getting the date wrong and confusing me. There's a countdown.
Is it the 3rd of the 4th or the 4th of the 3rd?
It's the 4th. It's the 4th of March. We're going to get some Tony Hawk's news. What do you think this could be? So over the course of the week, the way it's developed is they had a few people talking probably before they were meant to, a few skaters who were going to be in the game. Then in a map of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 grind map, which has just been launched, there's a scoreboard at the back of the thing, which has kind of looks like a Tony Hawk's logo and 030425. And Tony Hawk's put an eyes emoji on there. I mean, that is set in the skate park as well anyway. So it's a bit on the nose. And now we have a counter. What do you think's coming up next?
The significance of the date. I think that's a massive hint right there. We've had Pro Skater 1 and 2 remastered. Look at the date. Surely that's it, right? 3 or 4.
Pro Skater 3, 4, and 25.
And 25. Hell yeah, bring it on. 3, 4 to 5.
Yeah. Have they done a Pro Skater 5?
I have no idea, mate. I'm beyond it at this point. Like, I think for me it was very much. They did. Okay. Yeah. No, I think I was a 1, 2, 3 guy, and then I was an underground guy after that. And then a skate. And then a skate guy. I never played 4.
Oh, 4 is actually really good. I played 1, 2, 3, 4, and Underground, and that's where I fell off. So I don't think I played anything after Underground 2.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly where I am. Apart from Skate on Xbox, but hey, different. Yeah,
I'm all in for this. If this is a remake of 3 and 4, I'm all in. I love the remakes of 1 and 2, but I actually think 3 and 4 are the better games. Where with especially 4, so 4's the one that may change the formula a bit, where it's not just kind of arcade mode all the time, where you just hop in, you got 2 minutes to do whatever missions, where you get a bit of free roam around the level, and there's like, instead of having a set of things to do from a menu, there's quests. So you talk to someone and it goes, get a high score, that kind of thing. So it's still kind of same gameplay, but you are just in free roam in the level you jump into without a timer. So I think 4 was kind of the full evolution of what the original trilogy were before Underground started putting a full narrative in there and getting it on and off the board, which I didn't mind actually. But
yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, like you say, 1 and 2 being remade, amazing, absolutely amazing to bring that piece of childhood back, wasn't it? So yeah, do it. Absolutely do it.
Yeah, these games are kind of fall into kind of FIFA category for me, where I like to have them installed on my console, and once in a blue moon, I'll just jump in and play.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go back and try and get the platinum on 1 and 2.
Maybe you should.
I don't know how hard that even is. I've never played it for trophies. So I think it's something like you have to max out all skaters with all goals, and like it's a bit of a grind, no pun intended.
Okay. I love pun should be very much intended.
Yeah, it should be. It would. I'll take it. I didn't actually mean the pun, but yeah, it was intended. I'll edit around this.
Do it.
Yeah. So are you just completely done with Tony Hawk's? No interest then? Or could this whet your appetite?
No, absolutely. I'm very much on board for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it is, which to me that screams that it's hinting 3 and 4. That date's right there.
I didn't even pick up on that, until you mentioned it.
Yeah, 3.
I was just thought
3,
this,
4, like, nah. It's got to be. It's got to be like, yeah.
And I know they remade 1 and 2 in the past, but with the most recent remakes, they nailed the feel of them. They don't actually feel how the original games feel. They feel like how you thought they felt, which is, I think, the trick. That is the trick right there. Again, pun intended.
That's like working magic right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like as you say, yeah.
It has to feel like how you remember it to feel, not how it actually was. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in this. It's Activision. Oh, Game Pass.
Yeah, there you go.
Day and date Game Pass. Come on. To be honest, with it being Activision, I'm expecting that. Which means I probably will play this on Xbox, not PlayStation.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Well, that's a win for Xbox, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah.
Xbox right there.
Yeah, you can probably play.
That's what they want.
This is There could be a brilliant go. You know what? Because it's a remake of two games, and 4 is quite big. We're going to charge you £60 for this on PlayStation or Xbox. Or you can have this free Game Pass.
Yep.
Still buy Game Pass.
Absolutely.
But we'll find out next month.
Yep.
So moving on, I think, to our last story of the week, actually. The Last of Us, Season 2. The teaser's been forced, and it's going to be April. And now they finally give us the release date. It's going to be the 13th of April.
My soul is not ready for this. My soul is not ready.
No spoilers. Yeah. I don't know what to expect from this. I think it's going to be amazing television. But I don't know where it's going to leave off. Because I think you could potentially do an entire season just set around Jackson. Before, okay. So Jackson is kind of the prologue to the games. If you want to know more, me and Chris have been replaying The Last of Us Part 2 on stream. Then you go off to Seattle, where most of the game is set in Seattle. I think you could actually literally, because I think it's only going to be 7 episodes to set. I think to weave all the narrative threads in that game to get them all set up, you could potentially do 7 episodes in Jackson. You'd be taking at a slower pace in the game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if they want this to be a long-running series.
Do you think they're going to remain very much to the story beats? Do you think, obviously, if they're looking at stretching it out over seasons, then we're obviously not going to get the entirety of Part 2 in the said season?
They've announced that. It's coming off. They're splitting it across multiple seasons. They haven't said how many, but...
Do you think they remain true to the story? Do you think they change some story beats? Do you think that they... Yeah, like how drastically do you think they deviate from the plan, so to speak? Because it is Neil Druckmann writing for this as well?
If he's, I don't know if he's writing. He's definitely an executive producer, so he's definitely involved with the creative decisions. Okay. What I think is you're going to see a lot of what they did in Season 1, where they changed some storylines to fit the medium better, which I personally think was for the better. Because if you want the actual Last of Us Part 1 experience, you can go play the game. Or you can have this... I almost see it as a different universe. Yeah. Like in the multiverse, this is a different way the events could play out. I think they're going to do that. I think there's some stuff from Part 2 that could move up in order to kind of focus to extend the Jackson part, because there's a flashback in the game. Spoilers. I'm not going to say too much about, but there is a flashback in the game which me and Chris have played through on stream. I think that could be in this season and still keep the season located in Jackson. Because with it being a flashback to Ellie and Joel, it's set kind of when they are in Jackson between the events of 2 and 1. So I think you could put that as an entire episode on its own into this season. To kind of... I actually even know what episode I would put it in. Because this is a 7-episode season. That episode I'm thinking of, this flashback, is episode 5 for me. Because then the major events that kind of kickstart the entire game would happen in 6, and you deal with a fallout a bit, and Ellie setting off on a quest to Seattle in 7.
So we've had the first season covered The Last of Us and Left Behind, so the DLC.
Yeah.
The second season, they're saying the second season is going to cover events from The Last of Us Part 2.
Yes.
But obviously not the entirety.
No, there's no way you could do it in 7 episodes.
Of course not. Expected to expand to span multiple seasons, and writer Craig Mazin does not want the series to overtake the games. That's interesting.
Yeah. Which I think then, if you're going right, season 2 is set in Jackson. Season 3 is going to set in the first few days of Seattle. Season 4 is the end of Seattle. Season 5 is what comes after Seattle. Suddenly you might be looking like 6-7 years down the line.
Hell yeah. Give me more Last of Us.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's go. It's great.
Exactly. I'm looking for it. Yeah. And as we've said before, ClickerCast Season 1 is available right now on the YouTube channel. Chris has been remastering in a very Naughty Dog style the entire first season of our show. And I think there's a few episodes still up for members only, but this Season 2 will come back. We haven't set the dates. Me and Chris have we started talking about when and then the scheduling. So hopefully by this time next week, we'll have an announcement for when the first episode of ClickerCast Season 2 will go live. It's just fitting around everything else, so we can make sure that we want to be consistent on the day because we do it live. You're welcome to join us. We do it live. So it's trying to get that consistency and making sure we have time to watch the episodes, because I think they're going to be coming out on a Monday in the UK, Sunday in the US. So making sure we have time to watch the episode before we record a podcast.
Of course.
Live.
Fair enough.
Because that would be a crap podcast if we hadn't watched the episodes. But that is all we have time for in the news. And we like to end the show every week with delving into the history of video games with This Week in Video Game History. So starting on the 22nd of February, Tom, which is the day we're recording, anything jump out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. 23 years ago today, Jet Set Radio Future.
Nice.
That was a game I really enjoyed. Hell yeah.
Never played
just
it.
Like rocket powered skates, literally just literally the soundtrack was amazing. You used to like jump around, literally. It was like an open, not open world. I can't really say open world, but it's like a futuristic cityscape, and you could like skate around graffiti things. You could like recolor things. You could complete quests, collectibles, etc. Great game for a game that is, yeah, quite dated now. Actually, I didn't realize it was 23 years ago.
It was the original Xbox.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe that's just something that could make do for Remake. Because maybe. I'm aware of it because it was an Xbox and I never had an Xbox. I never had a chance to play it.
It just had a really nice cell shaded like vibe to it. Like it was very much in that era of, I think it was right at the forefront of that cell shaded sort of time, like Borderlands, like even pre-Borderlands, I think at that stage.
Oh yeah, definitely. It would be definitely pre-Borderlands.
But it was nice. It was reminiscent of a Tony Hawk's style game, but granted as skating, like blading instead of. But the soundtrack was great. Yeah, the vibe was great. It was very futuristic. It was very anarchical in a way. The character design felt good. It felt very much sort of like almost like Saturday morning cartoons, but like of a 3D variety in a way. Yeah, I have fond memories of it.
That's good. One that jumped out at me is a game I haven't played, but it's been brought up in the podcast quite a few times recently. Is a Killzone 3.
Okay.
Many years ago. Surprisingly amount of years ago now, actually. Yeah. It was 14 years ago. I believe, was that the last in the series, Killzone 3?
Yeah, I believe so. Apart from, wait. Yeah. Have we not had Killzone on PlayStation 4?
Nope. Because Gorilla, who made Killzone, moved over to, what do you call it? God, my brain's not working today. Aloy. Oh God,
Gorilla.
I'm absolutely
Horizon. Yeah.
How did it not? I don't know. Horizon. Yeah, they moved over from Killzone to Horizon, and seemingly have no interest in going back.
Yeah, don't they make Lego games now?
They do. It's not bad.
Yep.
Not the greatest. It doesn't play like a normal Lego game, so you're not smashing up everything in the world. And things like if you play Lego games, you get like the True Believer stuff from Clout and any studs. It doesn't have that, but it's a fun game.
We had Killzone Shadowfall on PlayStation 4 as a release.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty sure I got it free with my PlayStation 4, one of those box bundles.
Yeah. Anything else that jumps out at
you? Quick look through the list. What do I see in there? Alan Wake's American Nightmare came out on the Xbox 360 13 years ago.
Is that the actual subtitle for the original Alan Wake?
Alan Wake's American Nightmare. I'm pretty sure it was. I feel like that was another spin-off of Alan Wake. I remember Alan Wake's American Nightmare coming out, but it wasn't Alan Wake.
Yeah, I thought Alan Wake was just Alan Wake. It is a downloadable follow-up and spin-off to the predecessor Alan Wake.
Spin-off.
Yeah, it's a spin-off.
But I know that one. I'm throwing that one out there for Chris because I know Chris is a big, Alan Wake fan. Now he's a convert. He's still trying to convert me. I need to very much again add it to the list of many games that I've got to play.
I played the first one. It's on my list of games I want to go back to and get the platinum on because it is a decent game. But I think they've evolved the formula into Alan Wake 2. When what was a decent game felt like good quality AA when I played it. It was old when I played it. Is now absolute premium AAA. That's the difference between 1 and 2 at like the level I think the games were pitched.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think that is all we have time for you this week. So if you have liked this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you're kept in the loop of all fantastic content, like the upcoming season 2 of the Clickercast. See, this is why you need to do it, which will be live as well. That is a show that Chris and I do live. Tom, you are more than welcome to join us on that.
Check my calendar.
Yeah, I need to check my calendar as well because we haven't scheduled it. But yeah, and with that, my name's been Richie.
I've been Tom.
GG everyone, goodbye.